All right. And thank you everybody for your patience. You know, we want to make sure we are all in the right space so that we can begin. And so I just want to welcome you all, parents, to our parent workshop tonight titled How to Build Stronger Communication with Your School Community. My name is Lani Perez, and I'm the new Executive Director of Language Development here at the district, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all. Thank you for taking time to be here with us today. We know that as parents, you're all so busy, and we know that we have a big week coming up next week with hybrid reopening. And whether you are coming back to school in person or you're choosing to stay in distance learning, it's an exciting week for everyone. And so thank you for taking your time. I just wanted to say that this topic really resonated with me because as a former school principal, and even now in my role, I have a lot of communication with parents individually and in groups. And I think it's really exciting that our district is partnering with the National Conflict Resolution Center to provide all of us, including us here, staff at the school district, and you as parents, tools to improve our communication. Communication is more important now than ever before, especially this last year. And so we're glad that you're here. Please let your friends know that this session is being recorded and encourage them to watch the recording. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Angelica Maldonado. She is our district's parent engagement liaison, and she will be introducing our guest speakers, and we hope that you enjoy this session tonight. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Perez, and welcome to language development and welcome to the district office. It's really exciting when we have new leadership. This is a large department that does a lot of good work. So we welcome you. I love seeing some familiar faces, and I am very proud of the partnership that we have established with the National Center for Conflict Resolution. This is about the third event that we've held with them, and we're really excited that we're able to record this so that you can see this at your leisure. If you were able to join us today, like Ms. Bettis shared with you, we really are striving to meet parents where you are at. We know that there is a lot of different ways you're being pulled. There's a lot of different priorities within this pandemic, within us slowly transitioning, actually not so slowly transitioning to in-person hybrid learning. And we appreciate every moment that you dedicate to family engagement, every moment that you dedicate as a volunteer to give service, to have better communication with our district, with your school site, because ultimately we all have the same goal. We want to see our students and children succeed in our community. And that only happens when we are collaborating, actively working together to make that happen. So thank you again for your time. And I'm going to pass this off again to Miss Celeste and to our presenter today. I'm really excited to work again with Miss Celeste and work with Miss Carla Brody. I'm going to pass it off with no other comments from here on out. The floor is yours, Miss Brody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us today. My name is Carla. I am with the National Conflict Resolution Center. I've been with the organization for about 6 years now, and I facilitate conversations like this with organizations and community groups and individuals, really about how to improve your communication with those around you. This is a really challenging time. We know that the last year and a half has been full of all sorts of changes. It's been really has uplifted our entire life in so many ways, and conflict is really high right now. We're really things are changing on a daily basis. We're getting new information and new instructions really about how to interact with each other, about how to best help our children. And particularly today, we're focusing our conversation around how to improve our communication with schools. Really, my goal today is to help share some tips around how we can better support our children, how we can really communicate in a way that we are able to be heard, and in a way that that gets our needs met instead of de-escalate, and in order to de-escalate the situation, right, instead of making it worse. And really, this is hopefully some of the tips that we will share can be applied in all sorts of situations, but particularly as we want to communicate our concerns around safety and around maybe social anxiety that our children are having, and around just how to support our children better. That some of the things that we share today will help us better be able to communicate with our children's teachers and school staff. And just personally, I have 2 young children that are in the San Diego Unified School District, and in the last week, I've gotten a lot of varied communication from my children's school and teachers, and I know how frustrating it can be, and how it can be hard to figure out how to respond. So I really hope that this training is going to be interactive. Please feel free to interrupt me at any point. You can use the raised hand feature if you have a question or a comment, or just take yourself off mute and share. And again, I really hope that this training is valuable. So we want to start with a quote that says that conflict is inevitable. It's the source of all growth and an absolute necessity if one is to be alive. Enter into it with integrity, respect, and some degree of confidence and hope. Most of us feel pretty uncomfortable with conflict. I know that even though I facilitate many trainings like this and do this for a living, I'm still not comfortable with conflict. I often feel my heart racing and really get flustered anytime I have to have difficult conversations with people, and if there is conflict. But I also know that it's necessary, right? At the end, even though it feels uncomfortable, it usually leads to growth and increased understanding, and improves most of my relationships if we're really able to navigate it well. There's new understanding that can happen. So hopefully at the end of this training, you will gain some confidence and feel a little more hopeful about your communication skills and how you communicate things. So we'd like to start with just talking about some of the concerns that you might have as your children are preparing to go back to school, right? So we see here an image of a tree, and we like to use this image as an analogy of conflict, of kind of what happens during conflict. If we look at the tree, we can see that the part that is most visible on a tree, right, is usually the trunk and the branches and the leaves and all of the things that are on top, right? But we know that underneath the ground, there's a whole root system that we can't see, which is very similar to what happens during conflict. We often hear complaints, right? Some of our complaints might be that our school is disorganized, or our teachers communicating things in the last minute, that we don't feel safe, right? A whole list of complaints, and often they don't sound that nice, right? And usually in conflict situations, people kind of just complain back and forth at each other. Well, you did this because I did this, or we get defensive, right? And we don't really get anywhere. So what we would like to do is try to communicate from our needs. Really think about the complaints that we're communicating and what's underlying those. What do we really want? right? So we know that below the surface are the underlying needs that are important to us, and we all have the same underlying needs in the end if we think about it. So I would love to hear from some of you and just ask when you think about your children going back to school, what are some of the needs that you have to feel comfortable? Just for an example, you know, we might think about safety as a huge concern right now. What are some of the other things that you might need from your child's school or your teacher, or in general right now, just to feel supported? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can write things in the chat.
I think, hi, I'm Gloria.
Thanks, Gloria.
It's like the group itself, the entire class, because sometimes I know that when we have to go to work, we send our kids to school not feeling that great, and we attempt to put medication, and I've seen that people give the medication, they so can feel great, and then a couple hours later they feel sick. And that's one of my reasons makes me feel sometimes insecure.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, Gloria. So your need is it around safety, or making sure that children are being well taken care of when they're at school? What would you say your need is around those concerns, the health concerns that you mentioned?
I think for all of us to be responsible when it comes to making sure nothing to school just because we don't have a babysitter or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we need responsibility from school administration and teachers, and we're putting our kids in the hands, right, of school administration, and we need that collaboration too. Thank you for sharing that, Gloria. In the chat, I also see that we have safety and communication and grace. Absolutely. I think we all need grace right now. What else? What else do you all need as we think about, as we prepare for our children to go back to school?
Hi. I think that we just need to have I know it's difficult, but in the circumstances, have a positive mindset. Me as a parent and as an employee of Chula Vista, I can see both sides as an instructional aide and a parent. And so, I mean, for me, I don't want to boast about our school, Vista Square, but I feel that they're very prepared. Since I've been on this journey from the beginning, I have seen all the preparations, all the information, and I'm one of those parents that I probably bug my son's teacher every year, messaging them often. Always, I want to know what is going on, what's coming up next. I'm always on top of dates. It may be because I just have one, but I like to just be informed and ask questions, and I've learned so much in these years being with my son in school. Now he's in 5th grade, so time has really flown. And these I love these kinds of workshops. If I could connect to all of them, I would love to. But I think that a positive mindset is something that we can look into it. I mean, I'm getting ready to go back to work next week. I'm keeping my son in distance learning, but that's a decision because it just works better for our schedule. But me personally, I feel like I just want to wait until vaccines are more distributed for children. I mean, that's just a personal thing. But I don't really have any concerns or complaints right now. But yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Melody, for sharing those. Yeah, you shared several things, right? So positivity, I think That's a great one. Even with all of the changes and all the stress and everything that's happening, having a positive mindset will definitely help things go better. It will help our children feel more confident in going back to school, right? If we're not instilling our fears on them and they're holding onto those when they go back to school, it will make it easier for us to communicate with others. Patience, I also really heard you talking about patience as all the changes are happening. Yeah, I think those are great contributions. Thank you. Thank you. And I think it can be hard sometimes, particularly when we have a lot of anxiety and where we might be angry, we might be sad, we might have a range of emotions, to just go straight to the needs. So sometimes even just expressing our concerns first, sometimes we can express our concerns maybe to others. And then from there, it's easier to try to translate them into needs, right? If we're really fearful about our child's health and about who's going to give them medication and how is communication happening, if our children aren't feeling well, really kind of talking about those concerns first can help us get to the root of our complaints, right? Thinking about, okay, safety is really important to me. How can I communicate my concerns from this place, right? How can I let my school, my child's teacher know that safety is kind of the most important thing to me, one of the most important things to me right now. Thank you so much. So any other needs and or complaints? If you want to start with the complaining piece and we can think about how to translate some of those, I would love to hear those as well. This is a good place also to vent and for us to share some of our concerns as we're preparing for next few weeks. Again, feel free to use the chat feature or come off mute and share anything that you'd like. I'm just typing some of the other needs that I heard into the chat. So some other needs that we know that these needs really that we talked about, safety and communication and positivity and patience, and we can think of a whole range of other things like respect, right, and transparency and understanding and listening and acknowledgement. All of these things are universal needs, right? We all have the same needs. It's easy to think when we're in conflict that we're on two very different sides, right? I want these things and the school wants these things, or my family wants these other things, right? But in the end, really, the roots are often the same. Often we might both be concerned about safety, but what safety looks like to me might be different than what safety looks like to you. So sometimes when we can identify the need, that can help us get to a solution or help us at least begin the conversation and think about, okay, how can we create an environment that works for all of us, will meet your needs and also mine. I also see another comment that says clarity, resources for families, and mental health resources and workshops. Absolutely. Yes, definitely a need for increased resources. Mental health concerns are huge right now. I think so many of us are experiencing a range of losses, right? Losses around COVID, loss of of friendships and relationships, loss of income, of our purpose, really, right? Because we've all had to stay home for so long. So really resources around those things, I think, are crucial right now. Thank you, Melody, for sharing these. So I think the sort of biggest takeaway from this is really trying to think about how you can better communicate your needs, better communicate what you want instead of what we don't want. This has been something that really changed my communication when I thought about this differently. And again, sometimes it can be really hard. It can be really easy just to go to the complaints and want to stay there. Often when I want to do that, I might call a friend first or talk to somebody else and just complain and just vent. But when I want to have a kind of productive conversation with somebody that gets results and helps the other person listen, I try hard to really communicate my needs, communicate what I want, instead of just complaining that you did this or you're not doing this, because that really, again, really puts the other person on the defensive or just often sounds negative, and it's really hard for folks to stay in that place. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is the importance of active awareness, right? It's really hard to come from the roots, to come from a needs-based perspective, if we are not taking care of ourselves, if we are not actively aware. And right now, as was mentioned before, we're in heightened stress mode with all of the changes that are happening around us, with the stress of trying to work and take care of kids. At the same time, I know as a parent, I have little time for myself these days, and that really has made it harder for me to really communicate what I need. It makes it, when I'm in that place, it's a lot easier to kind of just be in the leaves in the tree and just be in that complaining space. But it's really important that we're sort of filling. We do a lot to give to others, to either give to our children or to be a caretaker for others, but we need to fill our bank back up in order to really be in a place to communicate effectively. So active awareness really speaks to our ability to recognize style differences, first of all, right? We all have different ways that we communicate. Some of us are direct communicators. When we have a problem with somebody, we like to go straight to them, no beating around the bush, tell them exactly how we feel. And maybe we do this with a lot of emotion. We might be really upset. We might be really excited, right, when we're expressing ourselves, and the other person really knows exactly how we feel. Others of us might prefer to talk to a friend or talk to somebody else first. Maybe we are more indirect communicators, and often we think, why doesn't everybody communicate like us? Or why does this person need to get so angry, right, when they're expressing themselves? And sometimes that is really just part of our style differences. And these our ways of communicating really are stemmed in culture. They're stemmed in our past experiences. They're stemmed in our personality. And sometimes we might even want to communicate differently, but we're not able to. This is our natural way of communicating. So all of that sort of happens pretty quickly when we're in conflict or communicating with others. Sometimes just pausing and thinking, okay, maybe this person is not doing this intentionally to harm me, but this is just the way they communicate. So really being aware of that. And then checking our bias and our ego is also something that's so important, right? Our biases, our unconscious biases come into play all the time, even if we are not aware that it's happening. Maybe we are communicating with somebody, with our child's teacher or administrator, and they do something that triggers us or remind us of a family member, somebody that we knew, right, who did something that we didn't like, for example, or and that really impacts the way we communicate with them, maybe the way we treat them, and vice versa. Maybe they are doing that to us. So so often it's really important kind of just to ask ourselves, okay, is this really true about this person, or maybe it is a bias that I have. And checking our ego. Our ego comes out all the time in conflict, right? It's one of the things that gets in the way the most in conflict. It makes it so that we're more defensive. It's often hard to recognize our part in the conflict if our ego is firing. Our ego also makes it so that we are like to blame the other person, right? So really, as much as possible, trying to knowing first of all that that these things are our bias and our ego will impact our communication most likely, and trying really just to be aware of that, be aware of sometimes our body gives us signals, maybe our heart races or our temperature rises, and we know, okay, this is a time for me to pause and take a break before I maybe say something that I'm going to regret. And the last thing is to process our perceptions, right? Sometimes people's intentions don't match their impact, right? So really thinking, again, stopping and thinking about whether, okay, this is how I'm perceiving it. Is this really how the person intended it, or could there be something else in play? And really, I know that all of these things can happen when we're in communication with teachers, with school administrators, with school staff, with principals, right? Because it's really part of the culture that we've been in for a long time. So it's really important for us to just try to be aware. And the more that we have awareness around this, and awareness around ourselves and our own triggers, makes it easier to communicate from a place of calm, from really the roots and the needs-based perspective, rather than kind of just arguing. Melody, I wanted to just recognize, I see that you shared another comment in the chat, some concerns about adapting to change and feelings, of being overwhelmed, stress, and physical activity. Absolutely, I've definitely felt all of those on probably a regular basis. Are there any questions, concerns, comments about anything we've mentioned so far? How are you all able to sort of have this awareness and take care of yourselves despite all of the challenges right now? The overwhelmed feelings, the stress, the lack of time for physical activity and self-care. What are some of the things that you've all found that are helpful during this time?
I know for myself, Miss Carla, just getting more rest, being self-aware. You mentioned a couple of things of those feelings coming up, or I notice like my shoulders start kind of being tight, and really listening to our body and being more present. Um, I feel like when I'm catching those things and I'm going for walks in the middle of the day, even if it's just around my building, um, making sure I'm drinking plenty of water, um, getting time to talk to friends, and you know, self-care can look so different for us, and our kids need it, we need it, right? It's like the oxygen mask. I always think of the oxygen mask they show us when we're on an airplane, and it's very counter intuitive to being a mother, because we're sometimes it's perpetuated that we just take care of everyone else. We really do have to take care of ourselves first, or else we're not going to be our best mother or partner or employee, or friend. That's just
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Angelica. I know that also right now, around related to what you were saying, around this time, it can. I know that I've had feelings of sometimes feeling guilty when I take care of myself, right? Because there is so much tragedy, so much loss happening right now, so many people struggling, that sometimes we might even feel guilty taking care of ourselves or gifting ourselves time, or taking a walk, or doing whatever we need to feed us. But really, when we are able to do that, we're able to have more joy for our children, for our to be able to have difficult conversations and stay sometimes in the hard places. But yeah, I think thank you so much for sharing that comment. Any other things that you all are doing right now to sort of practice this awareness?
Yes. So I have been indulging in cooking. I didn't cook as much before, I'll be honest. But I felt like I had to step it up because I was home now. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. So I started getting recipes on YouTube and telling my husband, oh, today I'm going to make you mole. Tomorrow I'm going to make you enchiladas, and, some Mexican dishes that I really didn't make before, because honestly, I was sticking more to burgers and hot dogs, the easy stuff. But I think that really got me, to be creative, and got my mind to just enjoy that moment. And then my son was trying new foods. Now he likes wings. And so I was just frying and doing so much, and not looking at it like a chore, like, oh, I have to cook today. So I think that getting my mind off of new things, or setting myself with new goals, helped me to deal with that stress. And then also appreciating the little things, because I was, just thinking, okay, like you said, other people dealt with loss and so many things, jobs, and I was just counting my blessings, just realizing, wow, thank God for my job, thank God for my husband, he's still working, my family, so many things that you might take for granted daily, because you get into the routine and you think it's supposed to be that way, right? But I think that this pandemic really helped us to realize what's important, what's not, what to let go of, things that you really were pondering on, negative, and just focusing on your family and health mainly, because sometimes we don't, like Mrs. Angelica was saying, we don't pay attention to our body. Now I do realize, like, I get my shoulders hurt when I'm tense because I'm on the computer, or I'm just, worried about certain things, and then I realize, wait a minute, I gotta relax. And so you catch yourself, and you do realize that there's a lot of teaching moments in this whole pandemic, and it does depend how you look at it. And I know some families did go through some difficult situations, but I think holding on to our faith is very important. And and it's just going day by day. I used to think, oh, I have to plan next week and next month, and now I'm just, no, I got to focus on today and enjoy that moment, and with my family. And like, we can't really see our family, but calling my grandma, which is 89, and calling my sisters, it's not the same. I haven't seen them in almost a year because I'm trying to keep them safe and myself. But at the same time, I'm just hoping, okay, we're gonna see each other soon and we're gonna celebrate and have a big feast, a big, gathering. So that's things I'm looking forward to. And also setting goals. Now that we're home, I can do more virtual trainings and things for work. And it's just, I'm learning a lot about Zoom and a lot about Microsoft Teams. So, I wasn't as tech savvy before, but now I think that I'm getting there. So all of this has just pushed a little more growth to myself as well and to improve. So, yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those, Melody. Yeah, I think you said so many important things. Really, the importance of, again, recognizing the positive things, and that this time has been an opportunity to kind of reset and slow down and think about what's most important, to kind of root ourselves in that, and to spend more time with our family. To spend more time in nature and really nurture those things. All of that will really help us communicate our needs better. It will help us be able to not rush to our ego or to our biases if we're able to do some of those things. So thank you so much for sharing those. So the next thing we wanted to share is really thinking about how do we respond when we're in a conflict situation, right? How can we respond in a respectful way, even if somebody is telling us something that we might not want to hear, is telling us something that they're sort of blaming us for something, or is really coming at us, maybe even from an angry or sad place, has a lot of emotion, right? When they're talking to us, how can we still stay calm and respond in a respectful way? So there are 3 steps that we found to be really helpful in responding. I'm going to talk about the 3 steps, and then I would love it if maybe somebody has an actual conflict situation that they've dealt with. If it's related to your child's school, that would be great. It could be recent or a previous conflicts, just so we can demonstrate how we might respond. So the first thing is helpful, that can be helpful to do, is demonstrate understanding, right? Conflicts often happen and escalate because we often don't listen to each other when we're in conflict, right? We often think about what we're going to say next. We think about sort of how we're going to rebuke what somebody said. Sometimes just because it's hard to listen to somebody's complaints, I know that my mind tends to wander, and eye rolling can happen, and all sorts of multitasking, right, can happen. But if we're able to kind of just stay and hear the other person, and then demonstrate understanding, which is recapping the other person's main concerns in our own words. So kind of paraphrasing what you heard the person say. And hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate what this sounds like in a couple minutes. But that this can be really helpful, often because sometimes the conflict starts really just in the beginning stage. Just as we're listening or not listening to the other person, we might hear something else other than what they intended to say or what they meant to say. So often, really just kind of paraphrasing back what we heard the other person say lets them know that we're listening, shows respect. And also clarifies any concerns, any misconceptions right from the beginning. The second thing that can be helpful to do is to acknowledge the impact, right? So it's important for us to not only listen to the words that somebody said, but also really capture the feelings, right? If we think about when we have an issue or a conflict or something happened, something kind of that we want to get off our chest happened. I know that I often will call a friend or talk to my husband or or just want to vent, and it's really helpful when the person that I'm talking to understands how I'm feeling, really is able to reflect the feelings that I had in, and it can be as simple as, you know, this sounds like it was a really difficult situation. I can imagine how you know, how sad you are really that this happened, or how disappointing the situation was for you. I'm just really reflecting back on the feelings that that the other person had, and they might not say that they're, you know, that they're angry or they're sad, but if we're able to sort of be aware of that and be perceptive about their feelings, it really helps the other person feel understood. And lastly, the last thing is in identifying the needs. So these are the needs that we talked about, that are often the root of the conflict, or the root of the tree. Thinking about what the other person would have wanted. So if I'm telling a story of about, you know, my child's teacher keeps sending me messages, and it's changing the protocol, and tells me kind of different messages every day, or several times a week. What I really need is clear communication, right? So expressing that to the other person. So it sounds like you really needed respect, or you need communication, or that you would have wanted that safety is really important to you, right? And often, instead of doing this, right, we tell the other person what they need to do. Well, what you need to do is this, or I had a similar situation, and when I was in your shoes, I did X, Y, and Z, right? And sometimes when we jump too quickly to a solution, first of all, the other person might not be ready to accept that solution. And it might not really match what their needs are. They might really be concerned about something else, and we give them advice that really isn't so helpful. So really, these tools really help us just be able to hear the other person. They really help to de-escalate the situation. Often people expect us to argue back, or to get defensive, or to tell us that they're wrong. And when we're able to just stay and listen, and kind of hear the other person, paraphrase what they're saying, acknowledge how they're feeling, and then think about the needs, then from there we can try to move to a solution. But this step is really important to do first. Are there any questions, comments about any of these? Does anybody have a conflict that has happened to them, again, either recent or in the past, that we might be able to use just as a to demonstrate some of these skills? No? Perhaps something that has happened, or a communication challenge that was hard to respond, or sort of hard to stay and listen in the moment. And I've just put the tools in chat, these 3 steps of demonstrating, understanding, acknowledging the impact, and identifying the needs. Any challenges that you all anticipate maybe having that that maybe we could just talk about briefly, a difficult conversation that you might have to have with your school administration or teachers, or an interventionist that works with your children?
I know that these can be sensitive issues, and I want to be just aware and cognizant of that if someone wasn't readily wanting to share that within the group. But, these are conversations that we want to address, and we want to address in the most positive and impactful way. And, we want you to have a proactive line of communication with your teacher, and when things do arise, to allow an opportunity for that teacher to respond. And, only as if you feel that things are not being resolved at that level, then taking the additional step to reach out to administrator, just allowing the opportunity of grace, that amount of grace for a person to respond and to understand an opportunity to address the situation. And I think when we do that and we're calm, we're checking in with ourselves, making sure we're positive, no matter what it is, I think we're always best heard when we've checked in and we're coming from the calmest place possible. And it's hard to do when it comes to our kids, right? Those are our babies. But again, I think being aware of these tools and allowing those, there is room for escalation if need be, right? Again, we want to start that conversation with the teacher, allow for response, feel like we have to take additional steps, reach out to administrator, allow for time for response and resolution, and then worst case scenario, having to move forward with additional escalation here at the district office. But I want to reiterate that these are not easy conversations sometimes, but don't assume, and please allow for that time for response and allow for that time to probe what is going on. There may be dialogue behind the scenes that you're just not privy to. So, and don't wait to reach out to your teacher in the middle of the year, right? Like I'm going to use Miss Rodriguez as our star pupil here, because she's very engaged proactively. She's aware of those dates and wait, testing, what do I have to do to be ready for testing? I can already imagine the way that she's thinking. She wants to be prepared, and that's great. I encourage that. I don't want you to come when you see the test results that you're very dissatisfied with, right? We want you to know when testing has happened and what you can do, how to work with your teacher and your child's strengths and weaknesses. So I just want to leave those few points and to elaborate on that. Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Angelica, I think what you mentioned about slowing down is also really, really important in communicating and ensuring that things don't escalate further. Sometimes we really jump too fast to either maybe taking the next step and speaking to an administrator when things don't go well with our child's teacher, or taking it to the next level, or sometimes really just I'm thinking in terms of maybe email communication or any sort of written communication as well as verbal. Sometimes we might be really quick to respond rather than sort of reflecting on, okay, what would be the best way that I can communicate this so that my concerns are heard. So often kind of just taking slowing it down, right, and taking a little time for the anger to subside, for some of our emotions to decrease. It can be easier to practice these steps. And I also fully recognize that I know that these conversations can be really hard and very sensitive. So yeah, please take keep these tips in mind and take them with you, and hopefully you will have an opportunity to be able to practice these. And the more you practice them, the more they will seem natural and not like we're kind of reading a script when we're communicating. But I've really found that that responding in this way can be really helpful. So lastly, we talked about the importance of listening and responding to others, but how can we tell our perspective in an effective way? Eduardo, I see you have your hand raised. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to share my conflict story.
Please.
Mrs. Maldonado's speech, it convinced me. I'll share my conflict story.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, before I get started, I want to make it clear. When it comes to my child's school, I really like the staff. I like the administration, everything about the school. So it's going to be a little difficult for me to share this, but I would see where this goes and curious to know how you dissect it. So my older child, she was on the Girls on the Run program. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
I'm not, but others might be.
Yes.
So Girls on the Run, it's this after school program where teachers volunteer to coach the kids or girls to do like it trains them to run a 5K while teaching female empowerment and all that good stuff. And so yeah, I enrolled my daughter in for this program, and I went into the orientation, sat through the meeting, and so the coach at the end of the meeting puts her information and she on the board, and she goes, if you have any questions, reach out to me, call me, text me, whatever. And so the week before the program starts, I'm thinking, oh my God, I have no idea where my kid's supposed to go, like which classroom, because there's like 4 coaches and there's multiple places where they could have this kind of thing. And also, I don't even know where I'm supposed to pick up my kid because after the school, it goes into lockdown, and then there's several entrances to that school in particular. And so I asked my daughter, hey, you want to happen to know where I'm supposed to pick you up and where your meetings are going to be? And she didn't know. So I go ahead and text the teacher or the coach, and I text her, I'm like, hey, I thought my text message was polite. I say, hey, good morning, coach. I just want to know where my child's supposed to meet, and where do I pick her up at the end of the sessions, because these sessions are twice a week. And the teacher responds in a way that I feel like she kind of like bit my head off via text. She responds with like something along the lines, were you not at the meeting? Were you not listening? I said all this information at the meeting. You need to call me after school. And so, all right, whatever. I just do what I was told. I call her. She didn't answer, and I left the message. And then she calls back, and I wasn't able to answer. But she leaves a message answering my questions. And so the point I'm trying to make with this story was that, I don't know, I thought I did everything appropriate to get some information, and I thought that coach responded kind of inappropriately. And when I thought, she could have just answered the text, and then there would have been no issue for that. I don't know if that is something along the lines that you wanted us to share.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Eduardo. I really appreciate it. I know it's courageous just to share your story. We are almost out of time, but really quickly, I wanted to just practice these steps with your story. So let me see if I'm hearing you correctly. What I hear you saying is that you enrolled your daughter in Girls on the Run, and you went to an information session where kind of the coach talked about what was going to happen, and you were getting closer to the date where it was going to start, and you weren't sure where to pick up your daughter and time, and you contacted her, right, for more information, wanting clarification. And she responded really saying that you should have, that weren't you at the meeting, you should have listened, when it seemed like she was willingly and happily giving her information if anybody had any other concerns or questions. So I imagine, first of all, this was probably caught you off guard and was really frustrating. I imagine you're probably angry when you got that message back from her, and would have wanted.
I was not angry. I was just extremely frightened of that teacher.
Okay. Okay. It was a scary reaction from her, and maybe you would have wanted some more different communication, more respectful communication, and understanding that I'm sure that you were not the only parent that had questions about it, and it seems like you would have wanted her to communicate that differently to you.
Can I share one last thing? This is like my personal hang up, that as a result of that, it made me not want to ask any questions. And I didn't. I throughout the training or the sessions, if I had a question, I did not ask it because, yes, because I was quite frightened. But, I'll admit that's one of my personal hang ups. Yeah, absolutely. I think when we're responded to in that way, it can definitely make it so as we don't want to speak up at the next meeting or don't feel comfortable communicating with others after the fact. Thank you so much for sharing that, Eduardo. I want to get to the next slide, and then really quickly we could talk about how you might respond in a situation like that, or how you might kind of tell your perspective. Emma, can we switch to the next slide? I know we're almost at the end, but really quickly, just a quick recap. So we talked about the importance of sort of listening in a respectful way, but it's also important for us to share our perspective, right? Some things that can be helpful in doing this are to, first of all, state how the situation is affecting us without attacking the other person. So just saying things like, when staff communicates in this way to me, it can make it so that I don't feel comfortable asking questions at the next meeting, or I might not want to sign up my daughter in the future, right? If you were to express yourself to somebody else, or you could state your interest, really saying that one thing that's important to me is that when parents are not afraid to ask questions, right, of coaches or of staff or in meetings, and that there is this open line of communication, and that's not fear-based. And then also using we statements. So we need to find a way for parents and staff to be able to communicate more effectively, to be able to listen to each other better. Really using these kind of strategies rather than blaming, using you statements or words that attack others often can be really helpful in moving towards solutions rather than attack. So the last slide is just kind of a recap of everything that we talked about. We call this training the art of inclusive communication, because we know that effective communication is an art, and the A stands for active awareness, which we spoke about. The R stands for respond respectfully, and the T is troubleshoot together. And if we are going to set up a meeting with our child's teacher or an administrator, it's always helpful if we are able to first of all acknowledge our responsibility in it. Maybe even just saying that, maybe you mentioned this during the meeting and I didn't hear you. Kind of acknowledging that piece, even if you believe it wasn't true, that can often help disarm the other person. And then ending on a positive note also, just thanking the person for having the conversation or being willing to listen to your concerns.
Those are some things that can be helpful. So I know that it's already a few minutes after 4, and we so appreciate your time here today. I really hope that some of these strategies were helpful, and we can be applied really to more effective communication in your children's school. Are there any final questions, comments?
And I just want to reiterate, thank you so much, Ms. Carla Brody, for shedding light on. There's so much information. There's so much even more to this. We've really offered this during the window of a parent training session, which is about an hour or 45 minutes. But these trainings are actually 3 hours long. So if you feel like you got a taste and there's like more there to sink your teeth into, it's because there is so much more information. So if this is something you feel passionate about or you want more information about, please reach out and we can look forward to future events to kind of build on what we've heard today. And I just want to reiterate, part of the organization's need is to have the training evaluation completed or survey and the post. So Miss Emma just shared it in the chat. Please just, it literally is only a couple of quick questions gauging how you feel that you're learning these skills. And if, again, I know that this was an overview and there's so much more, but I just want to thank you again for your time that you're investing with us at the district. I assure you, not only are our executive directors, our assistant superintendent, but our custodians, our child nutrition services, our informational technology support staff, all the way to our teachers and our secretaries are exhausting that your children and your family are having the safest and smoothest transition possible to return to hybrid learning. And I just want to thank you, because the more time you invest in connecting with information in a proactive way, the better off your family's going to feel. And please take those moments where you feel like, whoa, take them with a grain of salt. Text messages always leave a lot of room for interpretation. And like I said, there's so much more to build on this. Thank you again to everyone that was with us today. Thank you to Mrs. Bettis, who cleared her schedule because she thought it was so important to ensure that she was supporting this department in our community with this topic. And again, Carla Brody, Emma, Celeste, for all your contributions, and for all of you who shared, thank you so much. You made this a very personal experience, and we wish you a great evening and a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful return to school. So again, if you need to reach out to us, my name is Angelica Maldonado. I'm your district parent engagement liaison. I'm an email or phone call away. I'll leave that in the chat. But other than that, we're 6 minutes over. I apologize for that, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.